To this point, we have spent a considerable amount of time discussing why citations are so fundamental to academic writing genres and how their mechanics function. In this material, we consider some of the politics of citation so we can be more critical about our own citation practices. We will consider what happens when a discipline or discourse community centers certain voices, how citational practices are sometimes bound up in complex histories of patriarchy, coloniality, and racism, and how we might strategically amplify certain voices so as to address some of these legacies. Since the 1980s, scholars have become more interested in how the politics of citation shape disciplinary knowledge, and have indicated citation patterns are not neutral measures. When I invoke the term politics of citation, I am drawing attention to the ways citation connects to the construction of authority. Unsurprisingly, there are politics and power built into who we consider to be authoritative within specific disciplines and on certain topics, and who the thinkers are that we insist must be cited when we're trying to make a particular point. I am also drawing attention to the fact that biases can and do play into the citational practices of individual scholars as well as larger disciplinary trends. This set of concerns is often linked to the emergence of critical race theory. In The Imperial Scholar, civil rights lawyer Richard Delgado pointed out that top white civil rights scholars tended to rely on a closed circle of citation that reinforced the very barriers to racial inclusion that their scholarship was designed to undermine. By closed circle of citation, I am pointing to the tendency for a set of scholars to read and cite each other. It's possible they were trained in the same program or in a similar way, where certain writers and texts were centered and certain ideas felt more familiar while others might seem less familiar or even less palatable. They could even be conference buddies, collaborate on grants, co-write articles, etc. It's also possible they don't have personal relationships, of course, but nevertheless think similarly about problems, and by citing each other, also amplify that set of ideas within their own discipline. As we have discussed, citations draw our attention to the ideas that supposedly matter and shape what we are able to think about in a given field. However, as Sarah Ahmed points out, citation practices can act as a, quote, rather successful reproduction technology, a way of reproducing the world around certain bodies, end quote. She adds, quote, the reproduction of a discipline can be the reproduction of these techniques of selection, ways of making certain bodies and thematics core to the discipline and others not even part, end quote. These citation patterns are not limited to law, and I'm including in the asynchronous materials connected to this class a couple links for you to read as examples. Bias in citational patterns may be unintentional. In an article about doctoral writing and the politics of citation use, Badenhurst, Arif, and Quinton point out that citation practices are part of developing a scholarly identity. Indeed, as Nigel Harwood and Boanna Petrick have described, citing behavior is a performance in and of itself, in Irving Goffman's sense. Quote, skilled performers manage the impressions they give to others to project the image they desire by imagining how their audience may see them. Yet to return to Badenhurst, Arif, and Quinton, many students are socialized into citation into such a way that these practices naturalize exclusion and discrimination in a way that becomes normalized and consequently invisibilized. Moreover, as Victor Ray points out, quote, inequality is reproduced and whiteness is institutionalized by citation patterns as earlier periods of overt exclusion are legitimated by an almost ritualistic citation of certain thinkers, end quote. Citation metrics, such as pictured on the screen here, report on how often and in what prestigious scholarly context a writer/scholar is cited, and this has impacts on their career as they are a measure of the scholar's intellectual influence, and they bolster reputations, in turn facilitating or excluding one from subsequent opportunities. poorer citation rates are sometimes attributed to being personal failings of unproductive researchers rather than the result of systemic exclusion. So instead, we might consider more productively how authority is constructed and contextual. In previous intro videos to our shared readings, I have offered a brief summation of the writers, and I do so to invite you to ask similar questions when you are determining who and how you might evaluate the authority of someone whom you may engage as another scholarly voice in your writing, as well as the framing of the journal that their work is published within. You will want to ask, who are they? What credentials do they have to speak on a topic? How notable are they in the field? And is this a trustworthy site of publication? Your integrity as a writer includes not only the accuracy of your summary and citation, but also your evaluation of who and what ideas you invoke. As you develop as a writer and researcher, you may also become more attuned to the genealogies of thought that deeply inform you. For example, Sarah Ahmed writes that citation serves as feminist bricks and feminist memory. Quote, citation is how we acknowledge our debt to those who came before, those who helped us find our way when the way was obscured because we deviated from the paths we were told to follow. And in her book, she points out how she cites feminists of color in particular who have contributed to the project of naming and dismantling the institutions of patriarchal whiteness. So she makes her debt to those feminists of color clear and makes it clear that she's also following in their path. Acknowledging and establishing feminist genealogies is part of her work of producing more just forms of knowledge and intellectual practice. As you step into your role of researchers, I encourage you to be intentional about your citation practices. You have agency when you cite. You get to choose who to cite, where that citation is placed, how much emphasis is placed on that citation, and will their names appear as a structural part of the sentence or in a parenthetical content? Will they be cited with a direct quote? Will your agreement or disagreement with the cited author be signaled through terms of evaluation, etc.? You choose who and how you want to engage with them. And you can contribute to the amplification of diverse notions of expertise, giving due credit and weight to knowledge producers through your citation practices. This is an active reorientation to thinking about citation and the politics of citation, where we consider these politics from the conceptualization of our research projects, not just after the fact as additive diversity or tokenistic engagement. And often this means thinking about who will be most impacted by the problem I am examining and what are they already saying about this issue. Here are the references I invoked in this material. Please check into our Canvas platform to see what additional activities I would like you to complete in this asynchronous learning.